No one expects to get robbed after landing at the airport. You go through security, follow the rules, declare your items, and yet somehow, you still end up losing thousands of dollars. This is not a hypothetical situation. It is happening more and more to watch collectors and travelers who are just trying to bring their own legally purchased timepieces back home. What if I told you that one American traveler had his entire watch collection held hostage by customs officials, not in a dark alley, but right in the middle of the arrivals terminal? This is not just one story. It is a growing nightmare in the luxury watch world, and it reveals a darker side of the so-called gray market that many people are still blind to. The victim in question had just returned from Europe. He had taken a well-deserved vacation, and, being a watch enthusiast, he took the opportunity to visit a few boutique dealers and score some incredible deals. These were not back alley purchases. These were legitimate shops with receipts, paperwork, and warranties. He picked up a Rolex Submariner, a Patek Philippe Calatrava, and an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, watches that were not even available in the United States without insane waitlists or premium markups. The total value, just over 110,000. He had done everything by the book, or so he thought. As soon as he landed at JFK Airport, things began to shift. Customs agents pulled him aside and started questioning him about the contents of his luggage. When they saw the watches, their entire tone changed. Suddenly, they were not just verifying documents, they were seizing his property. The man was shocked. He showed them the receipts, the proof of purchase, and even his own previous ownership documentation for a few of the pieces. But none of it seemed to matter. The customs agents told him that they suspected these watches were part of an undeclared import for resale. In their eyes, he was no longer a tourist. He was a smuggler. This is where things got murky. Under U.S. customs law, if a traveler brings back items valued over a certain threshold and intends to resell them, they must declare them as commercial imports and pay the necessary duties. However, there is a giant gray area when it comes to personal property, especially watches. If someone wears a 50,000 Patek Philippe on their wrist, is it a personal item or inventory? If they carry 3 watches in a case, are they a collector or a dealer? Customs agents get to make that judgment call, and often their decisions are final unless the traveler has the time and money to fight the case in court. The worst part, there is little accountability. In the case of this American traveler, his watches were seized without a warrant. He was not formally charged with a crime. He was given a vague receipt, told he would be contacted later, and sent on his way with empty hands. Weeks passed, then months. Emails went unanswered. When he finally got in touch with someone, they told him that his items were being held pending investigation, and he could face significant penalties if they were deemed undeclared commercial goods. No one could give a clear answer. And that is exactly how the system is designed, to exhaust you until you either walk away or agree to some kind of fine or settlement. Let us pause for a second here. If this sounds insane to you, it should, but it gets even worse. Because what customs officials are not saying is that they often collaborate with third-party auction houses to dispose of seized goods if they are not reclaimed within a certain period. That means your Rolex could be sitting in an evidence locker one week and on an auction block the next. And guess who profits? Not the original owner. These watches are frequently resold for a fraction of their value, and the government keeps the proceeds. That is not enforcement. That is legalized theft. Now, you might be thinking, why not just declare the watches in the first place and pay the import tax? That is exactly what many honest travelers try to do. But the problem is not the declaration itself. It is how unpredictable and inconsistent the enforcement is. One agent might let you through with a warning. Another might slap you with a 5-figure penalty. Some will seize everything outright, while others will simply take your word for it. The rules are not just confusing, they are almost impossible to follow without a law degree and a customs broker on speed dial. And guess who loses? Everyday collectors, small-time flippers, people who saved up for years to buy their dream watch overseas. And here is where the gray market gets dragged into the spotlight. The term gray market refers to authentic goods sold through unauthorized channels. That means a Rolex bought from a dealer in Milan and brought into the US without going through Rolex USA is technically a gray market watch, even if it is real and properly purchased. This loophole allows buyers to find better prices abroad, but it also opens them up to serious legal risks when crossing borders. Customs officials often use the term gray market as a weapon to justify seizures, even when the traveler has no intention of selling the watch, and once that accusation is made, it is extremely difficult to fight back. The situation has gotten so bad that some watch collectors now refuse to travel with more than one timepiece. Others ship their watches through specialized couriers, which costs thousands of dollars but offers at least some protection. A few high-end resellers have even begun advising clients to avoid wearing certain watches while traveling altogether. The fear is real, and it is changing how people interact with luxury timepieces. Here is an interesting point to consider. If this happened with art or jewelry, there would be an outcry. If customs officials started seizing paintings or wedding rings without due process, there would be lawsuits, media attention, and public outrage. But because these are watches, often seen as toys for the rich, there is a strange lack of sympathy. People assume that if you can afford a Rolex, you can afford to lose it. But that is not the point. The issue is not wealth. The issue is justice. And let us be clear, no one is saying that customs officials should turn a blind eye to illegal imports or money laundering. There are real criminal operations that use watches to move money internationally. But going after an individual collector who just came back from Geneva with 3 personal timepieces is not fighting crime. It is punishing hobbyists. And worse, it is creating an environment where everyone is afraid to even buy abroad. One former customs officer who spoke anonymously admitted that there is a quota-driven mentality in some departments. Agents are under pressure to seize items, make cases, and show results. Watches, with their high resale value and ambiguous legal status, are easy targets. They can be seized quickly, resold discreetly, and rarely trigger public backlash. In other words, they are low-risk, high-reward targets for enforcement. So what can you do if you are a collector or a buyer? First, you need to educate yourself on the legal limits. Bringing back a watch worth more than 10 Zollern, you better have proof it is for personal use. Better yet, wear it on your wrist and leave the box behind. Multiple watches in a roll. Be prepared to explain each one. And above all, do not try to play games. Customs has broad authority, and once your watches are seized, getting them back is an uphill battle. Second, you may want to reconsider buying overseas at all. As frustrating as it is, sometimes paying the premium at a US authorized dealer is the safer long-term move. At least you avoid the risk of having your collection confiscated at the airport. Or, if you do buy abroad, consider using bonded couriers or freight services that specialize in handling luxury items. It is expensive, but compared to losing a 30,000 watch forever, it might be worth every penny. And third, stay vocal. Share your story. If this has happened to you or someone you know, do not stay silent. The only way to push back against this kind of abuse is by shining a light on it. Forums, YouTube channels, podcasts, and blogs have become powerful platforms for exposing these injustices. The more people speak up, the harder it becomes for customs officials to operate in the shadows. Because make no mistake, this issue is growing. As luxury watches become more valuable and more globalized, customs enforcement will only get more aggressive. And until clear guidelines are established, the burden will fall on innocent collectors who just wanted to enjoy their timepieces without being treated like criminals. And here is something even more alarming. Some travelers have reported being coerced into signing documents they did not fully understand, often under pressure and without legal counsel present. These forms, once signed, can serve as admissions of guilt or voluntary forfeitures, making it nearly impossible to recover the seized watches later. Imagine being jet-lagged, overwhelmed, and suddenly facing uniformed officers demanding signatures with vague threats of prosecution. It is a psychological tactic, not a fair legal process. And while most people assume that international travel means dealing with foreign authorities, it is often your own country's customs agents who end up violating your rights the most. This is not just an inconvenience. It is a systematic flaw that must be addressed before more innocent collectors fall victim to a system that is increasingly blurring the line between enforcement and exploitation. And here is the final twist. Sometimes the watches never come back. They get lost in paperwork, sold off without notice, or simply disappear into the system. Imagine spending years curating your dream collection, only to watch it vanish into a bureaucratic void. That is not law enforcement. That is extortion in a uniform. Let this be a warning, a lesson, and a call to action. If you are traveling with luxury watches, especially ones purchased overseas, understand the rules, protect yourself, and be prepared for the worst. The gray market may be legal, but that does not mean you are safe from abuse. The real threat is not counterfeiters or flippers. It is the system that decides, without reason or recourse, that your private property suddenly belongs to them. If this story made you pause, think, or even feel a little angry, good. That means you are paying attention, because what happened to one American could happen to any of us. The only question is, will we stay silent or will we start pushing back? If you found this topic eye-opening, then you need to see our next video on the greatest digital watches of all time, where we break down the most iconic, functional, and revolutionary digital watches ever made. You do not want to miss that one.